All right, we are back on Play It Forward with Katie Enright today, director of Dog Park, nominated by Mary Lou Belli. Katie, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for chit-chatting earlier, just before we started, and appreciating what we're doing here. And thank you for, troubleshooting and working with us to get on the show. So it's good to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to be here.
Do you want to mention anything about yourself before we start, or should we just jump right into it? It's really up to you.
Sure. So I am from the west suburbs of Chicago. I am the 6 of 7 kids, which kind of has influenced my life a lot because it is the best training ground for comedy coming from such a big family, because you're literally food off of the, out of the dinner table, sent to your room if you're not funny. So I started putting on plays when I was 4 years old with my family. And that has really influenced my life. My parents were always super supportive of doing something that was a little bit off the beat, which has caused me to take some pretty big leaps. And here I am.
So we're having some pretty big leaps over here too.
So I'm guessing there's some barbecue action happening there.
Exactly. There's like prep downstairs for the 4th of July here going on. So Ma's doing some home cooking.
Nice.
We also have, my wife's family is huge, so they're all coming over with days and days of preparation. But that's intense. So like 6 of 7, totally can see how comedy is in the air. And you're saying if you weren't funny, your parents sent you to the room.
Well, not my parents, my siblings. My siblings were really very cutthroat about comedy. And if you made a bad joke, you would literally be booed. I mean, I make this sound like it's like a bad sorority or fraternity and like terrible initiations, which in some ways I guess it kind of is, but it was also an amazing experience, and it was just super fun.
It sounds like it. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm sure there's pros and cons of growing up with 7 siblings, and I can't imagine raising 7. But I think the pro is that there's a lot of love, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So getting right into the show, the movie, the short film you made, Dog Park, and, just setting up a little bit for the audience in terms of thematically, and then you can kind of help me out if I miss anything. It's a lighthearted comedy about a person, in this case, a woman who is tired of the dating scene, and she's doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so it seems on the surface, it's really a lighthearted comedy, and we've got, this woman who's doing something different. And when you just kind of lift that layer of the surface, it's really out of desperation. I mean, this woman is pretty desperate, and what she does is a rather desperate act. Certainly lies about it, and conceals some of her intentions and purpose, and kind of gets herself into a little bit of trouble that she gets out of. And this film made me think of what is the difference between comedy and tragedy. And I think Shakespeare said something like that comedy is the avoidance of tragedy. So, this, his comedic plays end in their comedies because all's well that ends well, but the tragedies don't end so well. So in this film, it ended well, but it could have not, quite easily. And I think, again, really peeling back that layer and saying, oh, well, I mean, this looks like a comedy, but it's really a pretty tragic situation. I mean, this woman is desperate for love, and she's like, going out on a limb here. And we all know what it's like to be desperate for love. We're all humans, right? So I guess laying that out there, right? Because that's really the meat of the movie. It's not what it just appears. So throwing down on that, I guess I would say, okay, now to the first question: where is the inspiration that you came from approaching, creating, directing this movie, and why it resonated with you?
Yes. Well, what's interesting is my friend Gilly wrote it, and she is actually happily married and has been happily married for 10 years and never really had to deal with the desperation of dating in any city. I was going to say Los Angeles, but really any city. So it's kind of funny that such a great character came from somebody that's in such a stable relationship. But I find that we as people have there's such a need to connect to somebody. And I find that we can connect in so many ways in terms of like, we can FaceTime. You're in a different state right now. I can talk to somebody in a different country. I can be at a dinner table and at a restaurant and be surrounded by people, and still everybody can feel so lonely because we're all on our cell phones. We're posting things to Instagram or social media, and we there's kind of this isolation that I feel like that we've built in the last 10 years. And with that isolation comes just the need to connect. And so somebody who's really wanting to be in a relationship will do anything it takes. And online dating is super scary, and it's super hard because you see someone's picture and 9 times out of 10, it doesn't really capture their essence. So that can be a really great angle and a really great picture, but then when you meet that person, it's not at all what you expected. So this is kind of, this story is a lighthearted way of having two people that are kind of at the same spot, because he's kind of just as lonely as well. And then they come together and they meet. And so the kind of main point of the story is neither one of them have dogs. So they meet at a dog park. She goes there specifically to try to meet a man because she feels like a great guy would have a dog. And he happens to be dog sitting for the weekend. And he says, "Oh, which dog is yours?" And she lies and says, "Oh, it's that one." And then the rightful owner takes, their rightful dog out of the dog park. And then he starts to go after that owner, and she stops him and she kisses him. And it's kind of a moment where she kisses him to stop him from causing a fight, but also just needing that connection and experiencing that connection. And I think it's a wonderful love story.
It's very cute. So I think, am I correct in saying that the answer to that question in terms of what was your inspiration is just your own human need for connection?
Yeah, exactly. And also just witnessing that in this day and age, that I feel like everybody kind of has that. I speak to people, I live in Los Angeles, and I speak to people all the time that say, it's a really lonely city. And I think that it's so easy to isolate yourself. And I lived in New York too. It's kind of the same thing. You get into the area that you live, and you can kind of stay there for a week and a half and not really exit your apartment even. That's 10 feet by 10 feet. But
sure, totally. And I think it's even lonely because, I mean, forget like American culture in terms of being so visually centered and so much posturing and social posturing with brands and how you show and the status and power of all that posturing. But in addition to that, I mean, two hyper advertising media cities like LA and New York, I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
So jumping, was there anything that you all also wanted to add before I mentioned that? Or I feel like I may have cut you off.
No, not at all.
Okay. So I guess the second question of Play Forward, what do you see, feel, understand as the message of the film?
Well, I think it's really interesting because it took a lot of courage for her to do that. It took a lot of courage for her to put herself out there. And so I feel like the message of the film is to do something that you might not be comfortable doing, and to just go with it. Just go where life takes you. And you never know where a great opportunity, not just in love, but in our careers, in every facet of our life. You never know where that nugget, that one moment that changes your life is going to happen. And that's really what does happen. When you, especially with love, you have the time that you had before that person, and then you meet that person and your life is significantly changed after that person. And then if you break up, then there's the time after that as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think that's a great message. And it's really like, breaking through fear, this shell, these boundaries of fear that we confine ourselves in often to, step out and do something bold and daring. And really, it comes down to something authentic and honest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that helps
And also it's also it's a little scary to go up to somebody and just stop and talk to them, you know, to if you're at a hike and you see somebody with a cool dog or a cool t-shirt, to be like, oh my gosh, and start a conversation. It's not something that I'm from Chicago, and in Chicago that happens all the time. You can stop and have a conversation with a random stranger, and you're not ostracized by them at all. But in Los Angeles, I went hiking one time, and I'd just come home from Chicago, and I started looking everybody in the eyes and saying hi, and I had my earbuds in, and nobody was saying hi back, and I was like, oh, I bet it's because I have my earbuds in. But it was because everyone's kind of here in their own world, and it takes courage to make a new connection and to reach out to somebody.
Totally. You know, I do something similar in New York. It's like you've got the people that grew up in the city, and they're very comfortable talking to others, strangers on the street, sidewalk, whatever it may be. And then there's people that, you know, have maybe lived there for quite some time, but they're really transplants, and you know, they tend to be more affluent, and they tend to be more job oriented, and they tend to be more within the confines of their own experience, and I think they're not really accustomed, or maybe they're, you know, often in competitive environments, so they're not accustomed, you know, when they get in the elevator to work, there's like that silence of the elevator, and there's a protocol of the elevator, and there's the not looking people in the eyes going in and out of those corporate environments, and so that can take place into in other, you know, residential buildings, high rises where they live. So there's tend to be this getting in the cab, getting into an elevator, getting out of the cab, getting into an elevator, going home, and, you know, this confined experience. So long story short, I'm always trying to, whenever I can, is say hi and kind of break that. You know, when you're confined with some random stranger in the elevator, what are you gonna do? Just like pretend they're not there. So, so I encourage you to keep saying hi to those random strangers, even if they don't give you a hi back, because I think it's meaningful. You know, it's meaningful to them, and it's meaningful to you, and those connections that do, it encourages human connection, and we're human.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you never know if that person's going to be your future best friend, and you never know if that person is in such a you know, suicide has been a subject that's been brought up a lot lately, because it's been happening a lot lately, and everyone says, you know, reach out if somebody's in need. But the thing is if somebody's going through something in their life, they don't have the courage or the strength or the will, or they don't feel that they're worthy to reach out to somebody.
Totally.
You don't know what that little simple hi is going to do to them in an elevator.
Oh, it's huge. It's so, yeah.
There was a beautiful story about a high school student who was a valedictorian and was giving the speech in his class, and he was saying, oh gosh, I mean, I didn't know I'd get emotional here, but he was saying that he was saying that he was going home one day and was carrying all of his books home because he intended on committing suicide. That is the star of Dog Park right there, Dash.
Nice.
Who was saying that he was intending to commit suicide, and that's why he carried all of his books home, so his parents didn't have to clean out his locker. And this one guy who's really popular and really nice came up to him and started talking to him and walked home with him and talked to him the entire way home. And then when he got home, he felt so confident and good about himself, and no longer wanted to commit suicide. And that guy ended up becoming his best friend in high school. And he revealed that in his valedictorian speech. And I was like, that's why I'm a filmmaker. That's why I'm a human. That's, you never know how you're going to change somebody or influence somebody. And it's
absolutely
be the smallest act. Him walking out with him.
Oh, that's huge. It's beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of I just, you know, there's a man in the building that I live. He's from Norway, and he's going back to Norway, and he's really sad about it because people there are more isolated than in New York in his experience. And he's, you know, in his probably mid-50s or something. And he said, I asked him, I think, what's your favorite thing about New York? And he said, you know, just walking down the street, and sometimes, you know, somebody will catch eyes with you and they'll just smile at you, and that makes your whole day, you know, just changes your entire day, you know? So it's amazing how we can do that for one another.
Yeah.
All right. So last question in Play Forward is, have you been changed? What have you learned on and off the set after making the movie?
Oh my gosh. Oh, Geez, that is such a loaded question. Just in terms of filmmaking, I made some pretty significant first-time filmmaker errors that I'm so thankful and so blessed that I learned on such a small scale, because I will never make those mistakes again. And that's something that Mary Lou, who nominated me, who's my mentor and just an amazing human being, she is always like, don't make the same mistake twice. And one of the most significant mistakes I made was I worked with animals for my first movie.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, not fun.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a dog fight on set.
Yeah.
And my dog, who doesn't listen to a word I say, had to become the main dog and the hero dog and had to perform a trick, which my dog will look at me and say no straight to my face when I call him. Like if I were to call him right now, not come. But I learned a lot in terms of I'm a very easygoing, go with the flow kind of person. Being the 6 to 7 kids, you don't get to be a stick in the mud. You kind of go with the flow. It's not, do you want chocolate or vanilla ice cream? It's, you're getting chocolate ice cream and you're going to be happy with it and thankful for it. And so I learned that I have to be a lot more structured in things, in terms of like, the dog fight would have never happened had I said, okay, all dogs on leashes and holding. But instead I'm like, we're shooting at a dog park. We're setting up. All the dogs can be playing. It's fine. And it's not fine. Like things like that I learned, that I have to be a little bit more structured in how I view things and not be so easygoing. And it's okay to not be so easygoing when it has to do with the safety of animals, people, or children. I also personally learned a lot. I personally learned that I could do it, which is pretty amazing. I learned that I really love collaborating with people, that I really love creating. I really love that's the number one thing that I love about filmmaking, is that it's a shared artistic collaboration. And it takes everybody working as hard as they can and as passionately as they can to make something great. And then when you've done it and you've made something great, everybody gets to share in the success of it, which I think is just an amazing feat.
Very cool. Totally agreed, and thank you for that. And I think just to maybe try to elucidate a little more, I think that's one of the really, everything you said is very particular to filmmaking, and theater being the other really collaborative art form, and of course music. But unlike more solo artists of writing or photography or painting, theaters or film is really interesting because there is that real interesting balance between disciplined and a more loose creative process, and having one kind of contain the other, and where does one kind of outweigh the other at different times. And it's, where do you need the structure, and where can you allow more for the improvisation within the structure. And that's a really cool thing to play with.
Yeah. It's terrifying, and in some ways it's kind of like improv. Like when you get up on stage, it's a terrifying moment because it could either be the best experience of your life or the worst, and you don't know until it happens. and there's you do as much prep as you can, you put as much work in, but there's things that happen, such as a dog fight, that you can't see until it happens, and then you're like, oh shoot, how can I prevent that for the next time?
And totally. And I think it's interesting how, it's, similar to the theme of your film, and stepping out of like the, bubble or the shell that confines us and as humans, and being more bold and daring. There's like this relationship in it with filmmaking, because that improvisation, I think the more structured the shooting times and days and formats are, like, in terms of what you need, right? And how the time and budgeting and resources goes in that. And when that's on a pretty good lockdown, and you have, a lot of room for flexibility, because people typically, underestimate the resources they need and overestimate no, underestimate the amount of time you need. But when you can have like a good framework that encapsulates that within terms of resources, and then as a director, if you can, I think, step in and allow yourself to risk more. I think, oftentimes there's a payoff in that risk taking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing that I've learned that kind of coincides with that is trusting your instincts.
Yeah.
Because I didn't trust my instincts, and they're in two separate ways. There was, I wish that I would have done something differently for Dog Park. And my instincts were telling me to do it, but we were losing light. We had one more shot to get, this, that, the other. Mm-hmm. And I was like, nah. And I decided not to listen to my instincts, and I paid a price for it. That's a weak spot in the film, and that's on me. But the thing is
it's a big lesson. That's such a huge lesson. That's the biggest lesson, like, of life, of filmmaking, of art. I mean, not compromising, trusting your instincts. I mean,
exactly. And for the next thing that I made a spec commercial called Just Jeans, and we shot. We basically shot from a certain angle, and I was like, I really wanted to get this shot, and the DP was like, actually, we got it in this, and I was like, oh yeah, you're right, we did. And then my instincts, we moved on, but we were still at the same setup, so we didn't have to change lights or anything like that. It was easy to move back to that other shot, and we moved setups, and I was like, I really need that shot. And I knew it in my gut. And because I didn't listen to my instincts for Dog Park, I knew I had to this time. And I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. I know we've already done basically the shot, but I'm just going to tweak it and do this. And it's a shot that made it into the final cut of the spec commercial. And I love it. And I'm so happy that I listened to my instincts. And that's too, like, performance wise too. Like you can listen to your instincts if you know you can do something different or tweak something. And that's such an important lesson that I learned. And I'm so happy I learned it on my first project, so I can take that to every project that I do from now on.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So on or off the set, whether out like hiking or in a dog park or on set filming, always trust your instincts.
Yes. Amen. That's the great lesson of today. Be kind to others and trust your instincts.
That's awesome. Beautiful. Well said. Katie Enright, director of Dog Park. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Katie. Oh.